All right, we're back. Julian and I are here taking you through the Legacy Swiss rounds. We've got round 5 coming up. We've got a mirror of maybe the most important deck in the format, the blue-red Murktide deck. We're going to see 2 players square off and see who can get the best of each other. Christoph Schlom and Connor Mullaly playing the Izzet Murktide mirror. Players are shuffling up, and when they're ready to go, we'll go down the table. Okay, we'll take a look at the deck list first and see if there are any differences at all. Julian, you've been playing this deck a lot recently. This looked pretty stock to you?
Yeah, this looks pretty stock to me. I actually cheated and I already looked up some of the deck lists. There's one minor difference that we're going to see between the two lists. So this one has 4 Mishra's Bauble, which of course helps a lot with Dragon Rage Channeler and just like, sometimes fine-tuning some of your cantrips. Whereas the other one that we're going to take a look at, I think in a moment, cuts 3 of the Baubles, and we're just playing some extra utility in Chain Lightning, which it's not the worst, right? You still get to kill like 8 creatures out of the other deck, and Brazen Borrower, which will most importantly allow you to bounce Murktide Regents. So
Yeah.
those are really the 2 big differences we see. I haven't taken a look at the sideboards yet, but
Well, that's okay. We can worry about that when we get to it. But yeah, so if we can go ahead and pop up Connor Mullaly's and see what Julian's referring to here. Yep, there you go. So yeah, Chain Lightning, I feel like went out of style and then now has come back in small numbers.
yeah, it's almost there's almost like this feeling. If you're not maximizing your bubbles, there's a couple of different cards you could put in there. Of course, Chain Lightning is the most flexible of them all, and yeah, it's one of those cards that always makes you go, yeah,
Right.
Worst case scenario goes to the face, and in a deck like this, that also can help quite a bit. But it doesn't really get me excited. But we will see what it's gonna do.
All right, so let's go ahead and get down the table. Players are ready to go. Connor Mullaly versus Christoph Schlom. Connor was, if I remember accurately, the first player out of the championship last year. And by that I mean the player who came the closest in points to qualifying but came up short. Did not manage to get in, and I know he would like to make his way in this year. So
Okay, Christoph with a cool play. Just to start out the match, you immediately use your Bauble on yourself, and that's gonna tell you whether you want to crack a fetch land on the first turn to maybe get rid of a card you don't want, or play out straight up. Oh, nice, a black bordered Volcanic Island. I liked it quite a bit.
all right, so your right card is drawn very tentatively there for Christoph, and Connor will check the Delver. Denied.
Oh, is that a Chain Lightning in his hand? It looked like he wanted to do something. Oh, it's a lightning.
There we go.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
all these old cards.
All right.
It's like an alpha beta lightning bolt. I like it. I like it.
I mean, I can respect the Black Player Lightning Bolt, I suppose. All right, Wasteland does take out the Volcanic Island. Maybe much harder to acquire, but dies just as easily.
And no follow-up play from Connor here. No creature, no ponder. That already narrows it down what he could have in hand here quite a lot, right? You would expect something like maybe Daze's Forces, maybe additional lands, Murktide Regents, Expressive Iterations. And those are pretty much the cards that he's going to maybe a Brainstorm, and that's what he's probably going to have, maybe another Lightning Bolt, and that's what you're working with. But none of the 1-mana creatures, and also no ponder.
Well, we do have a ponder for Christoph.
And Christoph's really committing to the old frame. He even has the old frame ponders. I like it.
Sion, Volcanic, and cantrips and Force, I believe. There's Force, Bauble, and I didn't make out the other card, but certainly Christoph has some nice tools to work with here.
I think he's just gonna, at least that's what I would do, right? Sit back and try to develop your advantage with the Expressive Iterations. Try not to draw too many Force of Words, really, because that's always like one of those cards that it's good when it gets you over the line, but in the general way these games play out, it's really not the kind of card you want to have, because the only thing that's really worth forcing is a Murktide Regent in the first place. And even then, that's something that you can't really afford to do all that much, because otherwise your opponent's just gonna get there with all his Delvers and Dragon Rage Channelers, and I mean everybody's been there, right? First of all,
Yeah,
it's kind kind of like a necessary card for a lot of matchups, but in the fair ones, you don't really want to see it all that much.
Right. So that Bauble did actually see a Daze on top of Connor's deck, which is maybe the number one card you'd want to be aware of in your opponent's deck or a hand, as it is something that you can actively play around if you want to.
Yeah, and Connor sitting, as it seems to be, like on a very reactive hand, and I'm this almost feels like a control mirror at this point. Like you're sitting
Sure.
back, you're posturing for position, like you're trying to get to a point where you get to resolve your expressive iterations, and then eventually, like as soon as a player feels like, okay, I think it's my mana base is safe, and I can also like respond to what my opponent's doing, I'm gonna start dropping important cards, most importantly Murktide Regent, especially in the first game where there's only going to be like one, or in Connor's case, 2 outs to the card, and Brazen Borrower as well. This is it's not goldfish magic, but it's very scripted magic, almost in a way. Like there's one card you want to maximize, and that's the iteration. And other than that, you want to play like clean cantrips. You feel happy like throwing a Delver or Dragon Rage Channeler out there, because it doesn't really matter whether they flip or not, or grow or not, because all the removal spells that are going to hit them are going to hit them either way. So yeah, I guess that's part of why people don't always appreciate the Izzet Delver mirror, and I can see that. But I also like the one thing I like to see is when will people start picking their spots to make something happen. I think Connor is now happy running out the Expressive Iteration.
Yeah, there it is. And that was very nicely put. Scripted, but not goldfishing. So Connor will resolve the first iteration, but Christoph has his own and plenty of force wills to protect it if need be. Connor
Yeah,
will
sitting on
put
2 Farciphers. I would like, if you're not fighting over the iteration with your Farciphers, there's really only Murktide that you're fighting over at this point. And of course, what you don't want to see on Christoph's side, then is for Connor to just like start dropping all those 1 mana things that you don't really want to fight over, but you also like you need to make something happen because you're sitting on a board of creatures that can still like deal 3 or 6 damage to your turn. And yeah, I guess we found a Dragon Rage Channel. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, Dragon Rage Channeler. And there's a land on top of the deck left over from the Ponder last turn, I believe. So Christoph will decide how this wants to work. But yeah, now knowledge of that Daze is, I think, affecting Christoph's development, because that iteration may have been played last turn. So we're going to see it come out now. And if this resolves, then Christoph might be looking to make a land drop and then play the Dragon Rage Channeler.
Looks like 2 Wastelands, and I think another iteration. I'm not sure.
Well, the more iterations, the better, is my understanding of how to prioritize things. So we saw yesterday in Modern. I think we're going to see the same thing today in Legacy.
Yeah, and both players are already able to eventually drop Mystic Sanctuary. Now they have 3 islands in play, and just replay those iterations. And yeah, that has been my experience all week. When you play these mirror matches, it's iteration after iteration after iteration. Like, it's not uncommon for people to play 5 iterations over the course of a single game.
Dragon Rage
Sometimes even
Channeler.
6. Sometimes you
6?
pick up. Sometimes you pick up the Mystic Sanctuary for days, replay
Sure.
it. Another
Okay.
iteration. It's been done. We have the technology.
Yeah, I guess we do. Dragon Rage Channeler into play, and like you were saying, it dies to everything. But that doesn't mean that Connor has a removal spell. I mean, Christoph actually doesn't. He has cantrips and forces.
Yeah,
So,
and we keep talking, like in the previous match, it also entered a similar game state, I guess. It feels a lot like limited magic. Like you have these creatures, and you have answers, and you have ways to I guess manipulate your draw, which is not that common for limited. But other than that, we have creatures and we have removal spells, and that's pretty much like I almost want to call it like chess, like how it plays out in these lever mirrors. There's these blowout draws. They don't happen all that often in the mirror because your opponent has very efficient tools to fight back. And yeah, it sometimes really feels like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here, I'm gonna maximize whatever I can do with my deck, and eventually, my ideally supreme resource management is gonna get me there against my opponent. And yeah, we're gonna see. I think we could be sitting here for quite a while until something big
yeah,
happens.
I mean, that's a nice plan, unless both players are on the same plan. And
I mean,
then
that's right. If both players are on that kind of plan, like if both players are on the plan of I want to be the better player. I'm gonna play better, and I'm gonna come out ahead. That usually makes for great Magic, because eventually something is gonna crack, and then the other player has to improvise.
So someone can find some triggers from Dragon Rage Chandler, for example. We've had Christoph's was in play, but got killed with no triggers. Connor may be looking at the same. And just the ability to like surveil some lands or some extra dazes into your graveyard when they're going to be dead, which is basically where we are now, would be advantageous in the long run. Here is, I didn't actually see what card was selected there to go back on top of the deck.
You can guess.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. You're right. I can. I guess I didn't need to see it.
Yeah, it's just gonna be another Expressive Iteration. This is what we're gonna do all day. I've even done things where I use Daze to bounce my Mystic Sanctuary, even though it wasn't gonna actually counter something, just because I wanted to get that extra Expressive Iteration, especially like in the mid and late game when Daze is nearly dead. That's a play you can do.
Okay, here is iteration. Resolve. So neither player willing to fight over iterations, just going to save up to fight for Murktides.
It's a famous story from, I want to say it's the World Championship in 2002, where everybody was playing Talk, like AI
Yes.
Talk,
Yeah.
and the conventional wisdom back then was you have to, in the mirror, you have to fight over Factor Fiction, right? Factor Fiction, big card advantage spell, gives you huge selection, and you have to fight over it. And the big innovation back then was, I think it was Carlos Romero, who ended up winning the World Championship. He realized, okay, we are not gonna fight over the card advantage. We are literally only gonna fight over Psychotalk. And I wasn't nearly good enough, or maybe still not, I'm good enough to fully understand the extent of that. But when I read about that as somebody who was learning Magic, it blew me away, because I just loved the idea of a player going against the conventional wisdom. And even then, it feels wrong almost. But yeah, it almost feels like a mini game of that is playing out with the Expressive Iterations here.
It's very cool that that was significant to you, growing up as a player in Germany, because I had the same reaction. I remember that very well. In fact, that's probably the only World Championship I remember much of at all, because that story is so good, and competitive players want Magic to be about knowing the matchups and skill and not luck and top decking. And that was such a great example of a player just having more accurate and better knowledge of how things worked and benefiting from it.
And I wonder whether somebody's actually going to figure out the blue-white driver matchup to that extent as well, because right now I don't really see a dominating position of somebody who's like, okay, this is how you play the mirror, or maybe it's hidden behind some Patreon that nobody has ever heard about, but I'm not aware of it. And that's why I like seeing these mirror matches, even though I understand why people don't always want to see them. So yeah, now you have a 4/4 Murktide Regent, which most importantly gets around Bauble, and also gets block your any of the small creatures that Connor could ever put out there. By the way, I think if we use Mystic Sanctuary, like if we bounce and replay it, we can even grow the Murktide Regent, right? Because that's
yeah, that's a pretty cool way of getting around that. So first Murktide comes down as a 4/4. Second Murktide then will use additional fuel from the graveyard to grow both of them. That's what Christoph's looking for here. So that's an experienced play right there, not burning all your graveyard on the first Murktide. And perhaps, some surprise on my side that it actually resolved, given, we've had better sight of Christoph's hands than Connor's. Well, we know there's Force of Wills in Christoph. Is that, just noticing this now, I believe production, there's a typo in Christoph's name on the screen. Maybe we can get that fixed. So Dragon Rage Chandler attacks.
Yeah, I guess we're not gonna block. Okay, so Connor kind of offers the 2/1. I'm not sure, or maybe he wants to. It's actually kind of hard to see. It's the Dragon Rage Chandler 3/3. So we got an instant sorcery. There's an artifact as well, right? Land, of course. Well, they trade. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, would have been a trade either way, but yeah, with the block and the bolt. But okay, one Murktide down. So that was a 2/1. But is that an advantage for Connor because he lost less relevant cards?
It's really hard to say. Like right now, I think they're both sitting on a full grip of cards almost,
Mhm.
and just you know, at some point it might even start mattering keeping track of how many lightning bolts have been played, because once you start running low on lightning bolts, it's all these 3/3s are gonna become a lot better because all of a sudden, like, you can't really casually remove them. You have to stonewall them with a Murktide.
Mhm.
And the longer we play, the more important the extra removal spells that Connor has will actually become, because Connor has a Chain Lightning and Connor has well, a bounce spell in Brazen Borrower, which is also going to turn to another creature. So the longer the game goes, the more I'd rather be on Connor's side, even though those are just like 2 cards in a tempo mirror.
Right.
But if there's any kind of difference, and with how many cards these players get to see, then those 2 cards might actually like become important.
And this is rough. So this is the Murktide being cast here for Connor. Christoph has been planning, presumably, on using Force Wheels on Murktides, has to fight while tapped out, so is vulnerable to Daze. Connor doesn't have one, which is fortunate for Christoph. But we see Force back, and then Christoph. Okay.
Yeah, we're
Yep.
building this deck. See,
Yep.
some eye candy for the viewers.
All right, Christoph. Some confusion here as to okay. Anyway, okay, so there's second force. Murktide doesn't make it. Both players lose most of the cards in their hand.
Yeah, so much for a full grip of cards, I guess.
Yeah. And well, it was bound to happen sooner or later, and now we'll see what's left over. Expressive iteration, I guess, is the best way to rebuild as it is to do everything else. Oh, well,
Yeah,
there's a Christoph
that's
Sands
probably
Merc.
saturation in hand.
Yeah, that's an excellent set of cards there. And it can't probably isn't a surprise to Connor that Christoph has another Murktide. Otherwise, the first one would have come down bigger.
Yeah, that's pretty much to be expected here, I guess.
Yeah.
So this one might actually go for 4 size.
Mhm.
This is gonna
Notable, perhaps, that that first Murktide from Christoph, if it had gone full size, would not have traded for Dragon Rage plus Lightning Bolt.
I think the expectation would have been if you had gone for 4 size, it would have been Force of World.
Right. Yeah.
Either way, it ended up being a 2 for 1 for Christoph.
Mhm. Okay, so Wasteland off of Expressive Iteration.
It doesn't feel too good to actually, like, have to get a Wasteland here, but, I mean, you take what you can get.
Right. Still, there's 5 land in play for Connor. Maybe Christoph fires off those 2 Wastelands before passing the turn.
I mean, that's a super crazy scenario where you, like, basically end up wastelanding all the red sources your opponent has. You have 4 wastelands. They have
Right.
well, they also have a steam wind, so even that is not really gonna work out, so.
Well, let's see. Yep. So other Wasteland stays back potentially. I mean, could be waiting for
Basically
the
to trade
other
for a potential
Sanctuary.
base, yeah,
Yeah.
or make use um, just, like, safe against days. But yeah, have you kept track, Joe or Chad, anybody, like, how many expressive iterations have been resolved in this game thus far? Is it, like, 7 or 8? It's kinda crazy.
I don't know. It certainly the number is growing. It's probably at least 5, and we can
Yeah,
see the
maybe
second.
production can introduce some kind of expressive
Yeah,
iteration
we
in the
we we
future.
shouldn't even count life total. We should just count expressive iterations. First to 6 wins. All
So yeah,
right.
now Christoph finds himself in a scenario where you might actually just like wanna play a protect the queen game almost. Like you right
Mhm.
now, your dragon is big enough that you can even like survive double bolt or creature block plus bolt. And I think he also has a pyroblast in hand, which is of course a huge card in the matchup.
Yeah, it certainly would be. So shuffle off the ponder. Yeah, Brainstorm, Pyroblast appear to be the cards. Best draw is probably another Murktide, right? Or
Yeah,
Expressive
that
Iteration.
happens.
That's what you're saying. Those are the 2 cards that are most relevant here in game number 1. Swing in for the full 8.
Yeah. And now we just add another Delver. And from Connor's side, you would think that Petty Theft would be a good draw because you get to bounce the big dragon, and then you also have like another flyer that you can install to maybe block a diver or something. The
Mhm.
thing is, Pyroblast is such a good answer because it basically answers both sides of the cards immediately. It goes to
Yeah.
the graveyard, doesn't go to exile, you can't replay it.
All right. So now Christoph will fire off that other Wasteland. So Connor is still pretty healthy on mana. Shrugs that off without much of a trouble, probably.
Yeah, but it's
But
also like 6 is always an annoying life total, right? Because that's
yeah.
one hit from one of the tiny creatures plus a bolt. And
Mhm.
even though I think we've seen like 1, maybe 2 bolts out of Christoph, with the amount of cards that both players get to see, you always feel like you have to close up the matchup the match real soon once you go to such a life total.
All right. Force of Will drawn after being revealed for Connor. And if there's only 2 cards in Connor's hand, then this is bad news. Okay. Chain Lightning after Wasteland takes out Volcanic, so it can't be reflected. Good awareness
Oh,
there,
now we
but
can win, right? Now we can Pyroblast the Delver if we want to. I mean, it's
uh,
a bit of a
yeah.
risk because the opponent is representing a remover spell and Petty Theft.
It depends on how many cards are in hand for Connor, because Christoph does know that Connor is a force. I'm not sure Connor has any other cards. Maybe there are.
Mm. And we even had a Daze to try and counter the Petty Theft. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. But we
yeah.
win either way.
All right, so that is it. Christoph holds forces back. Well, both players did to deal with the Murktides. Christoph draws 2 Murktides. One manages to max out and get the job done. So that's kind of the way you described it. Expressive Iteration and Murktides are the name of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
By the way,
that's
did you know which kind of win percentage Blue Red Driver posted on the weekend at the Magic Online PTQ?
oh no, tell me. What do you
Can you
got?
guess? It was by
Is it
far the most played deck.
yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
This is for the whole field? Or
Yeah, it
for
was
Swift Lane?
222 players, and I think
Alright.
like, I don't know, 50 players or so. Actually, I have the numbers here.
Alright, I'm gonna say 56.
Okay, so it's actually 60%. So 54 players played it so basically 25% of the field played Blue Red Driver, and it posted a win percentage of 60%.
That's
Kind of
pretty lofty.
outrageous.
Yeah, that is very strong.
Good
Alright.
deck with this.
Well, yeah, we can try and look at the deck list here, real quick. The players are presenting already, but maybe we can see because the games will be more interactive now. There are more ways to deal with Murktide in the form of the Pyroblasts, which makes a big difference. There are some other things that can be played with. There's something like Narset, which I don't know. Does Narset squeeze in? Do you experiment with Narset here, or do you think it's just a straight no, or is it an obvious inclusion? Because it certainly impacts a lot of cards.
I would consider bringing it in. The thing is, it depends on. It's not one of the very first cards. Like the
Right.
first cards you bring in the Pyroblast that we see here, and what else is there? I think in this list, in this sideboard, there's really only Pyroblast
Mhm.
and then Narset. It would make it 4 cards, so it would be a straight swap, for example, for the Force of Worlds. I could see that. In that case, Narset would come in, even though it's like at 3 mana, it's always so and so, but the matches go pretty long. The annoying thing is that Narset doesn't stop Expressive Iteration,
I know.
but you still
Yes.
can hit.
Yeah. That certainly matters. All right. Players are drawing their hands. Let's go ahead and get down there. Assume both players are probably boarding similarly. Bunch of single mana red spells coming in. There's at least one Force of Will in Christoph's hand and a couple bolts. So certainly a defensive setup. Okay. 2 Force of Wills.
I see Connor has a Snapcaster Mage in sideboard, which is another one of those quote unquote grindy cards that could make a difference if the game goes long and you have a lot of mana. So I think Connor overall has the better tools, but it doesn't really matter all that much. And
Mhm.
like it matters once the game goes really long. But we've seen how it worked out in the last game, right? Christoph drew one of those dragons and rode it to victory for like 2 attacks or something.
All right. So we see the Wasteland fired off. Do you always, if the opportunity presents itself, just Wasteland immediately and if your opponent kept a 1 land hand, then they're screwed?
It depends. Like if my opponent goes Ponder Shuffle there, then I'm definitely wastelanding. If the opponent keeps and I have a one drop like a creature, then I will probably run out the creature. But if I don't have a creature, all I have is another ponder. There's a good chance that I will Wasteland.
All right, so the board gets cleaned there. Wastelands both ways, getting stuff out of the way, so the board is less cluttered for us viewing at home. We're just keeping it simple. Turn 3, 1 land, 1 creature.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna see a lot of that. 1 land, 1 creature, the rest of the tournament. Here, okay, so it looks like interesting. Christoph didn't side out any of the or at least he's got 2 forces in the opening hand. He's got 3 lightning bolts even, Murktide, and I think the last card is up Brainstorm. So he's very happy sitting back and probably plans on fighting over more Murktides with those forces. Because we already didn't see him go after the Expressive Iterations in the first game, so I guess that's just gonna stay as planned.
Yep. Okay, so I'm not sure there's another land for Christoph just yet, but Brainstorm has the habit of finding what you need.
I'm just wondering what else he started out. And the first thing that comes to mind is maybe Daze. He's on the draw here, so he feels like giving up a land drop could be an even bigger problem than it already is. And that's part of the conventional wisdom, right? And Delver decks a lot of time when you're playing mirrors. Some people like to always side out forces. Some people like to alternate whether you want to play on the draw. And I would guess that Christoph went with the second option of just like taking out the Dazes when he's on the draw.
Right. Connor, okay. Dragon Rage Channeler. And is there a trigger to be had? Now, Connor may also assume that there are Dazes in Christoph's hand, but then once he sees a Force of Will, the chance of that decreases, right? So then he would have less fear of tapping out later in the
There's
game.
also a world where you go like -2 forces, -2 Dazes to play into exactly that kind of scenario where your opponent might think you don't have it. That there's levels to it, but overall, I think you should go with what makes the most sense in the matchup and have those like extra levels of my opponent might think I don't have either Daze or Force. It's just like a secondary consideration.
All right, Bolt on Dragon Rage Channeler does get caught by a Daze from Connor. So onto the board and with a Surveil trigger. And Christoph with an Iteration, but Iteration not so easy to cast without a third land in play because of exactly Daze. And he knows he just saw one.
Yeah, this is a weird spot. Like you never really want to pass the turn, right? In the early game without doing anything, but you also don't want to play straight into Daze. On the other hand, like Connor already dazed, and if he dazes again, like it really constricts his mana. Whereas you get to probably like run out your Murktide on the next turn. I can see why he would be willing to basically throw it out there and see what happens.
Well, I think it was either throw that out, throw out Murktide, and those were the only options. But here's okay. That's putting Connor back on 0 land. That's pretty nice. It's hard to cast Murktide when you don't have any land to play.
Yeah, this is just like so nice for what you just mentioned, right? You get to put your opponent in a space where they are very far from casting Murktide, and they are even further from casting Expressive Iterations, because usually you want to cast Expressive. Oh, we are even getting rid of that. Okay. Usually you want to cast Expressive Iteration when you have 2 lands in play and a land drop still available. So it's more like a turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 play, as opposed to like a turn 2 play, which Murktide, once we get back to 2 mana, could become a turn 2 play. But we already see that Christoph has all the red blasts in the world, so he's in a very, very comfortable spot. I definitely would want to be on the left side of the board here.
So did Connor just like break the rules of the format by surveilling that iteration into the graveyard?
Well, what that tells me is that he's desperately digging for a land.
Yeah.
Like if you put away one of the best cards in your deck and you're not facing any kind of pressure from creatures, then I would think that he didn't have another land and he was really trying to find one of the Brainstorm.
All right, so here's a Ponder resolving after chain lightning goes to the graveyard and surveil this time around.
And from the way this game, I was going to say, from the way this game has played out, that's probably going to be a shuffle because I didn't see any land in there. I didn't really get to see his hand, but yeah, like we mentioned, surveilling away one of the best cards in the format in this kind of position really means you're digging for land, and everything speaks to that right now. If I'm on Christoph's side now, I'm hoping I can find another Wasteland. I want to get my third Wasteland.
Yeah.
We will see about that.
Okay, so ponder draws, and then we know there's, I mean, all kinds of tools for Christoph. He cannot fight over a Murktide without, okay, he'll end up first. He does so. And now with Pyroblast and Force, Murktide may be ready to go.
Yeah, I'm counting land, instant, sorcery, creature on Connor's side. So you can't really run out the Narset here because it wouldn't survive. Yeah, feels pretty safe to first run with the creature and just like see what happens from there. We're gonna
And this
make
is
this
such an
7-7, 8-8, I
evil
think.
play because in addition to Murktide being pretty good, obviously excellent, Connor's Dragon Rage Chandler is forced to attack into it here if with Delirium, and there's just no way around that aside from maybe your own Murktide to turn Delirium off.
Yeah, and the worst case scenario is you run out your own Murktide to turn Delirium off, and then your opponent just counters it.
Yeah, well, that's certainly just a risk you have to take, as there are not Pyroblasts in Connor's hand to easily dispatch Kristoff's Murktide, and we may be looking at a repeat of game one where, after some interplay and it's just a Murktide left over on Kristoff's side at full power, taking Connor down in a couple swings.
It's so funny how those games like can close out so quickly. That's not really a thing that used to be. Like they were always had the ability, right, to close out the games in a couple of swings. But ever since we got Murktide, that's basically double the size of a Tarmogoyf that it used to be, and those games can become really springy once the Murktides start coming down. And I feel like I've played matches in Magic Online and in challenges and stuff where you eventually hit that critical turn where the Murktides come down, and everybody plays like 2 or 3 Murktides, and they cancel each other out together with the Pyroblasts, and then it's a wasteland. Like nobody has got anything, and then you try to rip from the top.
Well, Connor does have the opposing Murktide, and Kristoff doesn't appear to have Daze, but we know he has Pyroblast, and we know he has Force, so we'll see how he chooses to handle this. Now, this is a place where, okay, wow, there's Pyroblast, and that's all it takes. I thought it would take more than that. This is a good sign for Kristoff, as there's still 2 pieces of interaction left. Meanwhile, serving in for 8 here.
Yeah, at least 8. It might actually be more. If
Well,
he's got a
that's true.
second Murktide, it looks like he doesn't. But what you can do here is you can literally just like drop your Narset with another land in play. Either have Pyroblast back up against Force, and we already saw that Connor probably doesn't have Daze because he didn't use it last turn. So we're sitting in a really good spot here.
Yeah.
Get that Narset out there.
Okay. Fetching first. Yeah, so Kristoff's, I believe, already been wasted once, so there's not another Volcanic, so we might see, basic island here.
No, I would think Mystic Sanctuary to put something we want on top.
Oh, sure. No, just basic
Okay,
island.
you're the better diver player. Let's get that basic island then. I guess the only thing we could really get from the graveyard is Pyroblast anyway.
May want to save that. Maybe looking for fresh cards with Narset, because if it's top deck, then Narset will find that card. So Kristoff could put any card in his graveyard, any sorcery into his hand if he had gotten the Sanctuary like you were suggesting.
Yeah,
Instead,
I guess this way you get to maximize your Mystic Sanctuary because you still have another fetch land in hand, which you can use later on. And if Narset finds something like Expressive Iteration, then that's, of course, something you'd rather put on top. And I mean, we're not even mentioning that. Like, we're still sitting there with an 8/8 dragon. So all of these shenanigans to maximize our draw and everything might not even come into effect. Like, if you're just sitting there and attack twice, then the game might
I even wondered about whether Narset would just not activate. Does this mean that Kristoff's either going to give up the Narset or he's going to not attack? And I think you want to attack. So there is an 8 damage.
I see. So you were going to say like it's not going to attack, it's not going to activate, so Connor won't be able to take it down, and that's going to make it harder for him to find whatever he needs to deal with the dragon. Whether it's going to be like
Lightning Bolt takes it down right there. Oh yeah. So swing in for Dragon Rage Chandler. Kristoff doesn't have to worry about his life total, as Connor's the one that's under real pressure here. And here's a Pyroblast. Christoph says, go ahead and surveil first. The way the stack works, the triggered ability resolves before the spell. Now, after that, here's the Force of Will. If this goes through, that's pretty significant. And Murktide's looking primed for another 8 damage swing here.
Yeah, did we actually find?
Oh, I think we did.
Yeah. Oh man, this is
Well,
gonna be a giant second Murktide then.
yes. Well, it's gonna be a
Well, the
giant.
first one is gonna be even bigger.
This is this could be a game-ending Murktide here.
Yeah, on 10 life, that's gonna be it. Like the only thing that Connor could have here is like another Pyroblast, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think this is just
Yeah.
GG. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Brainstorm and Snapcaster. Wow, nice cards left over in hand for Connor, but way behind on the board. And Christoph Schlom was going to win both games with 8/8 Murktides. Okay, so to runs legacy in the books, we saw Control Doomsday, and then we see Order is restored as Delver takes it down.